What I wanted to talk to you about now, though, were characters from Dickens that offer some sort of insight into caring, what we're talking about today. Where would you like to begin? What about Wemmick?
He's the clerk of Mr. Jaggers, and he has this extraordinary bisected life, because his working life is in the office, and he never speaks about his home life at all. He completely cuts it off. But when he leaves the office, the lawyer's office, he goes home to Walworth. He crosses a bridge, a little bridge that he's built himself, into his home, and there is the aged P, his elderly father, who is completely deaf, and the only way that he can communicate with him is by nodding, because he can't speak, because his dad can't hear anything. So he just nods very, very violently to him, and his father nods back, and there the two noddies are, and they're just so happy together. And he looks after him, he cares for him, he takes his meals with him, and he's got a gun, a cannon, to show when it's meal times, and he puts the gunpowder in the cannon, and this enormous blast which shakes the walls of the house. And you know what? The aged P can hear that because he can feel the vibrations on the floor, so he knows it's supper time. It's a wonderful picture of a really happy family.
I want to talk about, get you to talk about Miss Havisham and her relationship with Estella, because that's the darkest thing in the world.
Yes, again from Great Expectations. Has anybody, when I say Miss Havisham, hands up if you've ever heard of Miss Havisham, or you know, oh, isn't that good? Isn't that good? Okay, now hands up people who've never heard of Miss Havisham at all. It's not a bad thing, just tell me.
Welcome, because this young woman hasn't, and you're about to hear one of the most amazing things in the world.
Well, I don't know about
that.
From
one of the most interesting people on earth.
Miss Havisham is a woman who was jilted on the day of her wedding. Well, a rotten thing, as your face indicates. And it so deranged her, this disappointment, that she stayed in her wedding dress. And she stayed in the room, the long room, with the wedding cake and all the finery and the bouquet. And she never left it. And as the years went by, the beetles started to eat into the cake, and the mice scurried along the skirting boards in the room, and she went off her head. And she adopted a young woman, and I won't want to tell you too much about this, because I'm hoping that you'll read the novel Great Expectations. She used her caring for this young woman to bring her up, to break hearts, to take revenge on man. And she says, I bred her and educated her to be loved. I developed her into what she is, that she might be loved. Love her. I'll tell you what real love is. It is blind devotion, unquestioning self-humiliation, utter submission, trust and belief against yourself and against the whole world, giving up your whole heart and soul to the smiter, as I did. And that's Miss Havisham, folks.
Can we go to another Dickens character who I think is in Dickens Women, performed at the Opera House, I understand, over the next few days? Mrs. Gamp.
Oh, yes. Well, Mrs. Gamp, you see, Mrs. Gamp is a drunk. In Victorian days, midwives were also layers out of corpses. And so when somebody called for them, they didn't know whether it was a hatch or a dispatch, so to speak. And my Mrs. Gamp is a bit confused at the beginning. Mrs. Gamp also is described by Dickens as having a face for all occasions. She did a certain amount of good, but at the very end, she was very naughty because she decided that she needed the pillow of her ill person that she was looking after, and she grabs it and she says, "There! Now you're as comfortable as you need be, and I'm going to be comfortable too." That's Mrs. Gamp.
You know Joe in Great Expectations, the blacksmith. I've always thought he was an honourable man that shows another side of caring, because didn't he have a very difficult wife who he ultimately had to care for? Can you help me with Joe?
Yes, Joe Gargery married Pip's sister, who was just a horrible woman. And she was supposed to bring Pip up, and she brought him up with the tickler, which was the, what do you call it when you hit children?
Like a cane?
A cane, yes. And she was cruel and she was nasty. And she was punished, the way Dickens often punishes people, by being hit on the head by, well, I'm not going to tell you who, but somebody hit her. And she became really a vegetable. She couldn't speak and she couldn't move. And Joe took care of his wife. And he loved her for herself, even though she was a difficult, tough woman.